Greetings, welcome to the show. This is the overview, and I'm your host, Brother Mbogo. Today I'm going to take a look at this automation issue. I think over the last few years, people have been talking about automation, robots, AI, and those things, and in terms of how they're going to affect people's jobs. Around the world, I've been having some focus on Africa, but in general, how will this new technologies or the development of these new technologies affect the world's job market and people's employment? Some are arguing that, or some see the future in which all the jobs are going to disappear and automation, robots, AI will be running everything and humans won't have any work to do. So some also argue that because of that, they'll want to get rid of the humans or the lower class or working class people, and you'll have a class of elites running things. Then there's the argument about the elites owning everything and people have to rent. Even some of the ordinary things that we have, like cars and furniture in your house, will all be rented. But I'll focus on that another day. Today I'm taking a look at the jobs and the way what's happening now, actually, some of the things that are happening now with automation and AI, and how it's going to develop in the future. But anyway, let's have a look at what I'll be looking at. Basically, a lot of the information will be coming from this future of work and not future of work in Africa, basically, and how automation is going to affect work on the African continent. But it's the comments and some of the reports I look at will be broader than just the continent itself. So let's define what this thing called automation is in the first place. So automation is technology that assists humans with a limited guidance in the production, maintenance, or delivery of products or services, or autonomously produces, maintains, or delivers those products and services. So this definition encompasses a large number of applications, from physical robots programmed to do manual things to more advanced, what they're looking at to be more advanced, well, they're working on now, more advanced robots that operate by themselves without direct human instructions. And also they're talking about, yes, robot learning or machine learning, or AI learning, you can call it, where these devices and artificial intelligence learns by itself rather than humans having to put information into them. So you have these, for example, AI will gather its information from the internet. And we already know, because of the biases in much of the information over the internet, AI won't be independent, basically. It will still have the prejudices of particularly the Europeans when it comes to looking at African Americans or Africans of any diaspora on the continent, how they play out in terms of employment. If you're using AI, for example, to select people for jobs, it will still have the biases within the framework of how the Europeans see black people. So AI will not necessarily create an independent or unbiased in some form of intelligence that can look at things independently without any kind of prejudice. It will have the inbuilt prejudices of the Western societies. Anyway, let me continue. And in terms of the development of automation, another key development of automation in the secondary sector is the smaller robots that can safely interact with humans. These so-called cobots, short for collaborative robots, are designed to work directly with humans. They are increasingly being integrated into work domains, formerly exclusive to humans. For example, in the non-routine handling of materials, the key innovation in this respect are smaller sized, simplified training of cobots coupled with advancements in sensor technology. Basically, the cobots are robots that supposedly can assist humans, but in the future they'll more than likely take the place of humans in doing certain tasks as they become more advanced. So let me continue. So looking at the previous automation stages, there's a difference compared to what we're having today, or what is developing today. So each of these previous automation revolutions primarily centered around shifts in manual labor, with machines taking over roles, physical tasks, and creating new, more highly skilled, available jobs for humans. While it's still very much in its infancy, as deep learning matures, it represents a fundamentally new threat to human employment that society has never encountered before, machines that can displace human thinking and creativity. So robots before were just taking on simple tasks that humans might program them to do. Or automation, say in a factory setting, where instead of a human picking up a car door, for example, and welding certain parts, they would have a robotic structure doing that. And this would be programmed obviously by a human, but the programming part will be taken over by AI and automation itself. So the whole manufacturing process will be done by this automation and robots. And looking at the drivers, what they perceive in this Africa report, the 4 key drivers are: number 1, a growing consumer market, so increased market focused on efficiency and competitiveness. Cost considerations in high wage economic activities, labor. Number 3, labor market unintentionally favor automation. Well, if the cost of employing people is high and the robots are cheap, obviously some firms are going to go for the robots. And the lack of employee skills in an environment where, particularly in the West, you'll find people are not learning the right things at universities. According to a program I was watching just recently, the type of subjects that students are learning at university are not really relevant to the job market. So in such an environment, if a robot or artificial intelligence is available, that's what employers are going to go for. And there are other factors also. There are 4 key inhibitors of automation. Number 1, looking specifically at Africa, infrastructure problems. Number 2, widespread lack of capital to fund the automation technologies. Number 3, abundance of labor and corresponding low wages. And number 4, lack of industrial policies promoting automation. So looking at the last 2, the abundance of labor, it's currently on the continent here, it would be cheaper obviously to employ people than to spend a lot of money automating or bringing in artificial intelligence or technologies which are still developing. One of the reasons obviously is because they're still developing, they're still expensive. And the industrial policies that want to bring in these technologies is not there because the interest in it is also not there. So that's looking at some of the basics behind the introduction of this artificial intelligence and some of the issues that might prevent it, which I'll be looking at more later on. But in terms of what's happening currently with artificial intelligence, I'll be taking a look at, well, you'd be surprised at some of the industries that have actually already adopted artificial intelligence, even on the African continent. A closer look at current automation technology in different economic sectors shows a stunning variety of applications in a number of areas, including mining, agriculture, manufacturing, and warehousing, textiles, financial sectors, and healthcare, among many others. These automation technologies will bring productivity gains, well, that's what they say, better services, improved user experience. They are also likely to bring disruption to the labor market. Obviously, they'll bring disruption in terms of putting people out of work. And anyway, and change the demand for human workers in their sectors. So they'll basically decrease the demand for human workers. In the Western countries anyway, here on the continent, that may not happen in the near future at least, depending on how African countries or African leaderships take on this artificial intelligence or robotics or these new technologies. If there's a focus more on human society and the social aspect of human society, then it's less likely that people start adopting these technologies. And if they have a proper understanding of what the human society is, they'll see that there's no real need to adopt technologies. It might make things more convenient in some ways, but in order to maintain that human social structure or traditional societies, adapting new technologies, I don't think is the way to go. Anyway, let me continue. Anyway, nearly 60% of all companies and 84% of large companies surveyed said that over the past year they have already leaned on software, equipment or technology, including AI, to automate tasks and tasks employees previously did. So basically they're adopting these technologies. That's 60% of all companies, that's in the West, I would have to say, began to automate and use AI for tasks that humans used to do. Bosses are turning to AI for a variety of reasons, including to trim what they are spending on human workers. The CFO survey found that companies say they are using automation to increase product quality, 58% of firms, increase output, 49% of firms, and reduce labor costs, that's 47% of firms, and to substitute for workers. There's a lot of companies, if you're looking in the Western world, and they're saying up to 50% of their companies are now looking to automate or use AI for jobs that humans used to do. It means there's already a lot of job displacement taking place. That's in addition to creative tasks, which for some businesses are already relying on ChatGPT. And this is one of the areas that they thought artificial intelligence would not take over the human capacity to be creative. But already they're developing AI that can create art, for example. A lot of the websites online that you go to look for pictures, for example, for a studio background, a lot of those pictures have been designed by AI. So there are a lot of photographers that are already losing their work to AI. And they also collaborate a number of pictures or artistic factors, in terms of using material that's supposed to be copyrighted is picked up by this artificial intelligence through the internet to create their designs. And if a human was doing it, you could say that somebody could take that person to court for copyright infringement. But when you have AI, several AI programs online are now using people's copyrighted material to create content. And how they're going to tackle the issue, I'm not sure. Anyway, as I was saying, that's in addition to creative tasks for which some businesses are already relying on ChatGPT, other AI chatbots to assist, including crafting job posts, creating press release, and building marketing campaigns. I was even surprised that here in Uganda, I saw last year, it was an article about Africa Day or African Liberation Day, and it was drafted on one of the main newspaper websites here. It was explaining what it was explaining basically what Africa Day is. And it was surprising that something that should be written by a human that was drafted by AI, as if there are not enough people out there or looking for a job, or somebody already working at the newspaper can't draft something like that. And when you're talking about something like Africa Day, which is a political and social event, or it's a social event which you'd expect when a human writes about something, you can identify with the person who's writing. So when you write about something like Africa Day and the freedom of Africans from the colonial process, or the commemoration of the freedom of Africans from a colonial process, even some aspects of the colonial process are still there. When it's written by a human, you can identify with the person who's written it. But when something is drafted by a program and you're reading it, now there's something missing. You might say the social aspect of that article is now missing because it was drafted just blandly by some kind of computer, which is taking the world in a strange direction when human creativity is no longer part of the creation of something, and the human being able to relate to another human in that process of something that was created. You wonder where the world is going. The findings show companies are increasingly using AI to cut costs, boost profits, and make their workers more productive. You can't be running an innovative company without seriously considering these technologies. You run the risk of being left behind. This is what they're saying. I don't know the name of the person who said that, I didn't include it here, but some are saying that if you don't start using these technologies, you're somehow going to be left behind. In terms of the mining sector and gas, first, mining and oil and gas exploration are activities where humans have long sought the help of machines, but robots technologies will increasingly replace traditional machine operators. In fact, this is already happening. The multinational mining company Rio Tinto claims it has ore and waste materials weighing over 1 billion tons as of January 2018, using autonomous trucks operating in Australian mines, a number only set to increase as more trucks are put into operation. The South African company Rand Gold Resources has also begun using robotic loaders and automated material handling systems in its Chibale gold mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So already, even on the African continent, you see these large companies are now bringing robots into the process, which means they can come in and mine their resources that they want to, I wouldn't say steal, to extract without the use of humans or African workers, basically. And continuing, extractive industries in particular will be at the forefront of automation, given the ability of extractive companies to show their large upfront investment costs. Moreover, the industry's relatively high wages and overall employee costs, particularly for operators located in the industrialized countries, and stringent safety regulations, as well as potential disruptions in production from labor disputes, all provide incentives for automation. So a labor dispute is when you're not paying your workers enough, or there's some kind of mistreatment of your workers. So what it's arguing here is that in order to avoid treating workers properly, you just bring in automation, cut out the humans out of the process. So for the employers who are just looking at profits, it's easier now just to use automation instead of having to employ people and deal with the issues that people have, or treating people in the right way in the workplace. You just use automation. So you're cutting out the human aspect of the production process again. Importantly, the extractive industries are also not necessarily dependent on improvements in national infrastructure, e.g. high-speed internet, which are necessary for connecting autonomous machines and running internet. I think there'll be problems sometimes here on the continent where internet is not everywhere, so that can also restrict the automation process, which in some ways you might argue is a good thing. Anyway, continuing. This one is, let me see where it's coming from. This is number Lessons from History from McKinsey.com. So looking at all advanced economies have experienced profound sectoral shifts in employment, first in agriculture and more recently in manufacturing. Even as overall employment has grown in the United States, the agricultural share of total employment declined from 60% in 1850 to less than 5%. Well, that one we know already. But that's not using advanced technologies that they are bringing in now. Well, manufacturing fell from 26% in the US in 1960 to below 10% today. Other countries have experienced even faster declines. 1/3 of China's workforce moved out of agriculture in 1990 to 2015. Well, China, we know the history of China in terms of its accelerating its manufacturing for export industry, which wasn't really using technology so much. It's because they were bringing a lot of workers into the workforce. And this part is from that African report. The digital infrastructure, in particular internet access, remains severely limited, while the region has the fastest growing proportion of internet users. Internet penetration is still comparatively low in sub-Saharan Africa, ranging on the low end from 12% in Central Africa to 51% in Southern Africa. So internet is one of the things on the continent that would prevent the adoption of this AI and automation. Some would argue that, well, I would argue that in some ways that is a good thing, keeping this Western technology out of the continent in terms of labor. Why are you employing automation when people clearly need to be working? But it does argue further on that that's one of the reasons why automation won't take place, won't be adopted so quickly, because low wages and the fact that there are many capable workers out there. Low wages in turn affect the cost effectiveness calculations of introducing automation technologies and make large-scale automation unlikely in sectors characterized by labor abundance and low wages. So basically, because there's a lot of labor available and the salaries that are paid are quite low, then there's a chance to adopt automation is much less likely, because it'll be cheaper to use people than robots and AI. Broadly speaking, low wages generally favor workers over costly automation technology. We can reasonably expect little to no uptake across sub-Saharan Africa in sectors where the labor remains cheap in the long term. That argue that, but as I mentioned, the article that I saw in the newspaper that was drafted by AI could just as well have been drafted by a human. But sometimes people adopt these technologies because it's there and it can be used, even though there are plenty of people that could have done the work. So in order to be part of the contemporary world, you might find companies adopting something when they don't really need to. So anyway, let's look at technologies that are there now. In terms of what's going to happen in the future, I think I mentioned something about that already, but I'll continue to. This is the World Economic Forum. They have a report about the future of work. And here it's saying the World Economic Forum surveyed 1,000 global employers who collectively employ more than 14 million workers across 22 industries for its Future of Jobs report. And it found that 41% of bosses think they'll need to reduce their workforce in the next 5 years. And this report was written this year. I think it was in January. Why? Because they predict there will be a pool of workers whose skills or roles become obsolete thanks to AI. In other words, they plan to replace human workers with chatbots, automation, and large language models that can do the job faster for less. So this is what, 2025, by 2030, there'll be a good reduction of jobs across the Western world mainly. Anyway, even CEOs, the owners, bosses of companies, their jobs it's not just the lower workers, even the managers and chief executive officers, according to the same report. If it's any consolation, it's not just workers that bosses expect to replace with AI. A separate study from edX revealed that nearly half of CEOs believe AI could potentially replace their own jobs too. Avital Balwit, the chief of staff at one of AI's hottest startups, Anthropic, is one of few execs who has openly admitted her job, along with most others, are destined for obsolescence, and anyone who thinks otherwise is in denial. So the whole sector of employment, particularly in the Western world, is seen as threatened by technologies which are being developed by humans. Humans are developing technologies to take the jobs of humans, their fellow humans, leaving their fellow humans obsolete, not knowing what they're going to do in the future. Some are arguing that with previous technologies, jobs were lost, but jobs were also gained during the period. But because this new adoption of technology is so broad-based, because the previous changes, for example, the bringing in of electricity or the automobile, they replaced certain types of jobs, but they were not as broad-based as today. AI and automation will affect jobs across all sectors, from the ordinary working person to the bosses who are running companies. So saying that there will be jobs created in the future from even the manufacturer, for example, if you saying that robots will come in, some would argue that it still needs humans to build those robots. But the way automation is going, even humans will be cut out of the manufacturing process. So the jobs that you would assume that people would be doing, even the creative jobs that I mentioned earlier, but some people thought that robots won't take such jobs. Or coding, another thing which AI can do now, or they're developing AI to do. These are jobs that are considered safe. Even teaching. This Bill Gates mentioned a couple of weeks ago that all teaching jobs, probably in the West, will disappear. These are jobs that people thought, even with the coming of AI and robotics and the development of technologies, these are safe human jobs, but it seems they're no longer safe. So humans themselves are creating robots and AI to be able to do most of the things that humans can do. So jobs that were considered safe are no longer that safe. Corporate America is rapidly adopting artificial intelligence to automate work once exclusively done by humans. More than half, 61% of US firms plan to use AI within the next year to automate tasks previously done by employees, according to a survey of finance chiefs released recently. So those tasks include things from paying suppliers and doing invoices to financial report writing, said the survey conducted by Duke University and the Federal Reserve Banks of Atlanta and Richmond. So yeah, we're teaching robots to take our jobs, basically. Or the West is. Although I think innovations are also taking place around the continent in terms of technological development. But I don't know how, it won't be as, I don't think things will reach the extent that they're reaching in the West. One is an economic factor, as I mentioned, that workers here are still relatively cheap. But if African countries develop to the stage where they develop the middle income, the middle classes, then you'll find that, yes, since their salaries are becoming higher, some firms might turn to artificial intelligence and robotics in the future. But at the moment, it's not being adopted that much. The leading countries anticipate significant transformation due to robotics, whereas only 39 to 40 and 44% of our employers are expected to expect similar impacts in Sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. Basically, Sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East are not going to adopt these technologies as much as the West. I think the economic factor is the main figure there. Reid Hoffman, the billionaire investor and co-founder of LinkedIn. This is from, let me see where this is from. This is from, okay, it's from the report, the African report, Automation and the Future of Work in Africa. Reid Hoffman, the billionaire investor and the co-founder of LinkedIn, told CNN that AI will likely disrupt some jobs. Okay, some jobs, but not in the immediate future. No, this is actually from CNN. Years, not decades, but years, not decades, but years, not months. Hoffman said, referring to the timing of AI displacement of humans. I believe in 3 to 5 years we'll all have a kind of AI agent, co-pilot that's helping us with anything from how we cook dinner to doing your job and writing and so forth. Not sure what this AI agent is. Some say it's a software, say on your computer, that whatever you're searching for or doing it online, it will somehow find the information for you or assist you in being able to find the information or assist you in whatever work you're doing. To some extent, that sounds fine, but it's also gathering information about you, which certain people will, of course, make use of. Anyway, and these are some of the companies who are focusing more on AI and bringing automation into their industries. DHL, a global logistics company, pointed out that autonomous vehicles are particularly attractive for the logistics sector due to the limited liability of transporting only goods and not humans. Such advantages have spurred increasing automation in some warehousing and port operations. So, not having to worry about humans being injured and such things is one of the reasons also that companies want to adopt AI. Instead of making sure the environment is more safe for the human workers, they're arguing now that it's better just to get humans out of the mix. And further, car manufacturers such as BMW, Daimler, Tesla, or Volkswagen, as well as technology companies such as Alibaba, Alphabet, Apple, Baidu, Uber, or Yandex are engaging in fierce competition over their future positions in the autonomous vehicle market. So autonomous vehicles is a thing that's going to be a big thing in the future. Everyone wants to adopt it because it will make their companies so-called more efficient if you cut humans out of the mix. So this is looking at agriculture itself. The incentive for automating agriculture are compelling, particularly efficiency gains from higher crop yields and from reduced material and labor costs. Farming, particularly on a large commercial scale, is poised to go beyond using a single machine, for example an autonomous tractor, and connect different farming technologies to achieve a largely autonomous farming operation, ranging from crop planting to harvesting. The organization Hands-Free Hectare recently demonstrated in a trial that a fully autonomous farming operation is possible, and a market research study from June 2018 estimates that global agricultural tractor robots market alone will grow from 185 million in 2017 to 3.2 billion by 2024. Well, 2024 is last year. We'll see how much it has grown. So they want to even automate the agricultural sector. In Africa, that won't work at the moment because they use tractors and such things at the moment, but they won't cut humans out of the process completely, because you might find for smaller scale farming in particular, humans are still the cheaper option. Then there's the mining sector. Market projection for automation in the mining sector claim that automated systems such as those highlighted above will become increasingly common. One market research report suggests that the prospect of increased productivity and safety in combination with lower costs may cause the mining automation market to grow by almost 50% in the next 6 years, reaching 3.2 billion in 2023. So this is 2017. So looking at this growing use of automation, AI, and so forth, here on the continent in particular, I don't think it's going to develop that fast. only if people want to copy what the West is doing, or supposedly make their companies more efficient by cutting their people out of the process in an environment where jobs are needed or people need to work. But in traditional African ways of looking at the world, each individual has to be doing something for themselves to bring in their income or make a living for themselves. And companies are one of the things that employ people, basically, so somebody can earn something for themselves. So when you cut that out, well, in the West as well, when you cut that out of the situation, what are people really going to do? The world is moving in a direction which, whether it will really go that far, to me, I don't think it will go that far. People are already pushing back against the idea of automation. And some employers, I think, will still prefer to use human labor and treat their workers in a particular way rather than bring in automation and create an environment in which you have greater unemployment, and you'll have a mass unemployment. People have no money. There must be some kind of pushback against such an idea or such a concept of the future. Will it really develop that far? Anyway, that's it for now.